Right, let's try out a jet. Don't think I can remember how to fly this. This could be interesting. Okay, let's go. Pull up. Why is it not pulling up? Pull up! Pull up! Come on! No! Well, shit. Battlefield 3, probably my favourite first-person shooter of all time, and the first one to knock Call of Duty 4 off that top spot, and I think it's stayed there ever since. And what you can see in the background is a little bit of sort of classic Battlefield 3 gameplay. Conquest on Sen Crossing and Operation Firestorm, and a bit of Rush on Operation Metro. Now, if you're a current subscriber to me, which I imagine a lot of you are, you'll probably remember that I would regularly upload content of Battlefield games on PC. But I actually started on Xbox, which is why what you can see here is Battlefield 3 on Xbox One backwards compatibility. And it really got those nostalgia juices going. Battlefield 3 is a very special game to me. I put hundreds of hours into it across Xbox and PC. And it was the game that really helped me focus in on what I wanted to do here on YouTube. When I first started out, I wasn't sure what to do. I knew I wanted to make gaming content, so I covered a couple of different games, tried a few different series out. And then I went round to a friend's house, and this friend was a Battlefield YouTuber, and he showed me Battlefield 3. And I just remember being absolutely blown away. It looked beautiful, it looked epic, it looked chaotic, and it just looked like so much fun. And it was the first time in a long time that I'd actually got excited about a multiplayer first-person shooter. It actually looked like something I would like to play. And I bought Battlefield 3 on my way home from visiting his house. And at the time I had my Xbox 360, so I bought it on Xbox and eventually moved to PC later. But I just fell in love with it straight away. And I think one of the things that I really enjoyed was the challenge of learning how to play it, because it's very objective based. Now that may not come off in the gameplay in the background, because watching someone revive and capture different objectives isn't necessarily the most interesting thing to watch. But I do enjoy that objective based gameplay that you get with a Battlefield game. So I started to make Battlefield content here on YouTube, and I put hours and hours into playing Battlefield 3, thinking of interesting topics and trying to make videos that I was proud of. The game essentially had that magic touch for me. It had that little special thing that makes you want to keep coming back to it, keep interested in it, and play it as much as you possibly can. Then all the hype for Battlefield 4 started and everyone was getting really excited. I jumped on the hype train, bought Battlefield 4 and was ultimately a little bit disappointed. It had the obvious release problems. When it first came out, the game was, there's no other word for it, broken. But also it lacked some of that excitement and it lacked some of that magic that I felt I got from Battlefield 3. I'm not sure if it's because it wasn't the first one I played. Often if you enter into a franchise, the first game you play is the one that you look on most favourably. But it was missing something. Now eventually it did improve, a lot of patches later, it became a much more playable game and I did get lots of hours of enjoyment out of it, but it still didn't have that little spark that I got from Battlefield 3. And since then, I really feel like the Battlefield franchise has lost that magic touch that made it special to gamers like me. Obviously Hardline came out, that was a game that nobody really asked for. It was fun, but it wasn't anything special. And since then it feels like the franchise has gone essentially into a bit of decline. So let's look at what releases we've had since then. We've had Battlefield 1, a World War I based first person shooter. And the thing that confused me at the time was the community was crying out for a change, but they were crying out for a specific change. They wanted a World War II based shooter. Then Battlefield announced that they were going back to the First World War, and gamers just sort of seemed to go, well, it's not quite what we wanted, but it's close enough, we'll give it a go. However, I wasn't one of those people who was really keen to run out and buy Battlefield 1. I played it about a year ago and was surprised to find that there was virtually nobody playing it. It seemed like the game was dead. And I was trying to work out why, so I played it for a little bit and I got, I guess, a taste of what might have killed it. So a couple of things that I noticed. Firstly, the weapons weren't quite right. There was something felt off in the balance of the weapons. It felt quite difficult to get a foothold in the game. And the map design. Now, map design is something that's usually very good with Battlefield games. It's essential to that objective-based play, and I felt like the maps weren't designed well enough for the game modes. Also, the mechanics were a lot slower. Now, this I guess this makes sense. They're trying to stay accurate to the setting. You know, the First World War was comprised of troops who were signed up at ages sometimes 15, 16 years old, no military training, whereas the previous games set in modern warfare, much more highly trained troops, and so I think that was reflected in the gameplay. So I understand why they made that change, but it kind of made the game feel a little bit clunky, and it wasn't as playable as the previous releases. Since then, they have gone back to the Second World War with Battlefield 5, but it's almost like it's too little too late. You know, those same players that are disenfranchised with Battlefield 1 are probably going to look on another early 1900s war game with tinted vision now. And as a result, you can see that Battlefield 5 is also starting to die off a little bit now. You only need to look at some of those big Battlefield YouTubers and you can see a lot of them are now starting to post videos which are going back to games like Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4. The interest in Battlefield 5 just isn't there. I know Firestorm has revived some interest, but the base game itself, again, seems to have been looked on not particularly favourably by the general Battlefield community. And it's leading me to wonder if that magic touch has been lost. You know, what was it that made those earlier releases like Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 to an extent have that magic touch that kept you playing and playing and playing? You can go back to those releases now and you'll still find lots of full servers. People still go back and enjoy Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, Bad Company 2. They have that longevity that it doesn't feel like Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5 have. And if this curve carries on, you risk the franchise eventually dying. So what is it that's missing? And it's one of those things that's really hard to put your finger on. And I think it's essentially a similar case to comparing the Lord of the Rings films with the Hobbit films. Now, the Lord of the Rings films were a labour of love. You watch those films and you see hundreds and hundreds of extras, very little CGI, as much as possible done with live action, and it results in a much more believable, enjoyable experience. The Hobbit was a case of, okay, the Lord of the Rings was successful, let's try and cram 3 films out as quickly as possible, fill in as much CGI as possible. Okay, the final thing was a half decent movie series, but it didn't have that element of a labour of love. It was just a quick cash grab. And I feel like that might be what's happening with the Battlefield games. If you look at those older games, there were big gaps between releases which allowed for a very thorough and labour-intensive development. Now, that didn't stop those games releasing with issues, but once they were ironed out, you had a very well-designed, well-thought-out game. I mean, just look at the way things like Rush and Domination worked on, say, Battlefield 3, for example. They had areas of the map that you could tell were specifically designed to be little pockets of fighting between the two teams. There were lots of weapons with lots of customizable options, and there were other features that started to fade out with things like Battlefield 1, like hardcore servers. It felt like everybody was catered to. If you like going in vehicles, you can go on a big game of Conquest. If you like close quarters combat, well, there's a close quarters DLC, possibly my favourite DLC. Everybody was covered. The question is, what can be done? What can the developers do to try and spark that interest back into the Battlefield franchise and get that magic back? And I think the short answer is, do not rush the next game. Take time, do your market research, find out exactly what the players are calling for. It might be a case of a Bad Company 3 or a new Modern Warfare game, but try and hit that target market, bring the player base back and keep them there. Because it's that longevity that makes Battlefield feel so special. You know a game is good when you can go on it 6 years after it's come out and there's still lots of people playing it. That is a good game. I don't believe that in 6 years' time people will still be playing Battlefield 1 or Battlefield 5. So I'm not going to be making Battlefield 5 or Battlefield 1 content on this channel, but I do want to come back to Battlefield and start making those videos again because I do enjoy them. So what I want you guys to do down below is let me know what you would like to see on this channel. We've now have a chance to rebuild and start again. My current thoughts are focusing on games like Battlefield and DayZ, and then sprinkling in some other games that I'm playing with some friends. But let me know down below what you would like to see. It's great to be back. I'm enjoying making Battlefield content again. I hope you guys are enjoying watching it. But in the meantime, let me know in the comment section down below anything you think is interesting. I always promote a good discussion on this channel. You guys all take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you all very soon.